The 80-ninth voicemail ended with a sob I had never heard from my husband before, not in our 11 years of marriage, not even when his mother died. His voice cracked as he begged, "Please, Rebecca, call me back. It's not what you think." I stared at the phone, a cold smile forming on my lips. For 7 years, I had been the perfect wife to a man who lived a perfect lie. Now the private investigator's photos were spread across our kitchen table, the evidence of heat betrayal staring back at me. His other wife, his other children, his other life. This was only the beginning of what I had discovered, and what David didn't know was that I had saved the most devastating revelation for last. I met David Clark at a charity gala in Chicago. He was the handsome investment banker with the perfect smile who donated generously and charmed everyone in the room. I was the event coordinator who caught his eye. Our courtship was like something from a movie, flowers delivered to my office, surprise weekend getaways, and a proposal under the stars in Millennium Park. I said yes without hesitation, believing I had found my forever. "You were everything I have ever wanted," he had whispered against my ear on our wedding night. "I promise to be faithful to you and only you for the rest of our lives." Looking back, I should have seen the signs. The business trips that grew increasingly frequent. The calls that went to voicemail when he was supposedly in meetings. The subtle shift in how he kissed me goodbye, slightly more distant, slightly more hurried. But I trusted him completely. I was Rebecca Clark, the lucky woman who had married her soulmate. Our life together in our suburban Chicago home was meticulously planned. I left my job to support his career, managing our home and social calendar with precision. I learned to cook his favorite meals, maintained my appearance to his liking, and never questioned his late nights at the office. When I suggested starting a family, David always had a reason to wait. His career was at a crucial point. We should travel more first. The timing wasn't right. "Next year will be perfect for a baby," he would say, kissing my forehead. "Let me secure this promotion first." And I believed him. Every time. Each month when I was not pregnant, I blamed myself. Maybe I was too focused on it. Maybe I was too stressed. Maybe there was something wrong with me. David suggested I see specialists, and I did, enduring invasive tests and procedures while he held my hand sympathetically. "It will happen when it's meant to happen," he would assure me, though I could sense his relief each time a pregnancy test came back negative. On our 4th anniversary, I planned a surprise weekend in New York. I had arranged for his office to clear his schedule without his knowledge, packed his favorite suit, and booked a table at the restaurant where we had our first date after moving to Chicago. When I arrived at his office to surprise him, his assistant looked confused. "Mr. Clark left for Boston this morning," she said, checking her computer. "He should be back on Monday." I smiled through my embarrassment. Of course, I must have mixed up the dates. When he returned, I never mentioned the trip. He brought me a small gift, a Boston snow globe, and told me about difficult negotiations with clients. I placed the snow globe on our mantel and tried to ignore the doubt that had planted itself in my heart. As the years passed, I became an expert at explaining away the inconsistencies. The unfamiliar cologne on his shirt, a new office fragrance diffuser, the woman's voice I once heard in the background of a call, a hotel receptionist, the receipt for 2 movie tickets in his pocket during a supposed solo business trip, a kind gesture for a lonely colleague. I maintained our home with meticulous care, as if the perfectly arranged furniture and spotless surfaces could somehow hold our marriage together. I hosted dinner parties for his colleagues, smiling as they commented on what a perfect couple we were. I attended charity events on his arm, playing the role of devoted wife while he networked. I organized his closet, scheduled his haircuts, and even maintained a detailed calendar of his supposed business trips. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me," David would say, his blue eyes fixed on mine in a way that made me believe him despite the growing mountain of evidence suggesting otherwise. On our 7th anniversary, he was called away suddenly to deal with a client emergency in Denver. I spent the evening alone, watching our wedding video and drinking wine, trying to recapture the feeling of being truly loved. The woman in the white dress on the screen, gazing adoringly at her new husband, seemed like a stranger to me now. The next morning, curious and slightly drunk, I called the hotel where he was supposedly staying. There was no David Clark registered. When he returned 2 days later, I confronted him with this information. "I stayed at the Marriott instead," he explained smoothly. "The Hilton was overbooked." "I thought I told you." I nodded, accepting yet another explanation that didn't quite fit. That night, as he slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered who exactly I had married. The first thread unravels. The first concrete evidence came on an ordinary Tuesday. I was cleaning out David's home office while he was on another business trip, this time to Seattle, when I found a child's drawing tucked inside a folder. It was a crayon sketch of a family, a tall man, a woman with long hair, and two small children. Written across the top in childish handwriting were the words, "My family, Daddy, Mommy, me, Emily, and Jake." My hands trembled as I held the drawing. David and I had no children. We had no nieces or nephews named Emily or Jake. I searched through the rest of the folder and found nothing else unusual, just financial documents and work papers. That night I called David's cell phone. He answered on the third ring, the sound of restaurant chatter in the background. "Hey, babe. Everything okay?" he asked, his voice casual. "I found something strange today," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "A child's drawing in your office. It's as Daddy and mentions names I don't recognize." There was a brief pause before he laughed. "Oh, that. One of my clients brought his kids to the office last month. The little girl drew that and gave it to me. I thought it was cute, so I kept it. Should have mentioned it. It was a perfect explanation. Reasonable, logical, but something in his pause made me doubt. "Which client?" I asked. "Johnson, the tech startup guy. You met him at the Christmas party last year." I remembered Johnson. He was single and childless. He had talked at length about his bachelor lifestyle at that party. "I thought Johnson didn't have kids," I said carefully. Another pause. "Not Johnson. I meant Robinson, from the pharmaceutical account." The lie was smooth, practiced, but it was still a lie. That night, I lay awake beside him after he returned home, studying his peaceful sleeping face, wondering how many other lies that handsome mouth had told me. The next morning, I decided to check our phone records. David had always handled our bills, but I knew where he kept the files. What I found sent ice through my veins. Monthly calls to a number with a Massachusetts area code, dozens of them, often lasting 30 minutes or more. The calls increased in frequency around holidays and special occasions, including each anniversary we had supposedly celebrated together. I wrote down the number but didn't call it. Not yet. Instead, I began to pay closer attention to David's business trips. I noted their frequency, duration, and the cities he claimed to visit. A pattern emerged. Boston appeared every month, always for 2 days, often coinciding with weekends or school holidays. One evening, while David was working late, I searched his office more thoroughly. In a locked drawer, the key hidden exactly where I expected under the potted plant on his desk, I found a second phone. It was a basic model, not the high-end smartphone he carried for work. The wallpaper was a photo of 2 children at what appeared to be a beach. They were smiling broadly at the camera, their features hauntingly familiar, the same blue eyes as my husband, the same dimple in the right cheek. I scrolled through the contacts. There were only a few homes. Sarah, school, doctor. With shaking hands, I checked the text messages. They were filled with domestic details, schedule coordination, and affectionate exchanges with Sarah. Many ended with "love you" or "miss you." One message from 3 days ago read, "Kids can't wait to see you this weekend. Emily made you a special birthday card." David's birthday was the following week. I returned everything exactly as I had found it, locked the drawer, and replaced the key. Then I went to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left in my stomach but bitter bile. The evidence was too overwhelming to ignore, but I needed to be absolutely certain before I confronted David. I could not rely on confrontation alone. I knew how skillfully he could lie, how easily he could gaslight me into believing his explanations. I needed irrefutable proof, and I needed a plan. The next morning, I called in a favor from Caroline, my college roommate who now worked at a law firm specializing in divorce cases. Without revealing too many details, I asked her to recommend a reliable private investigator. "This sounds serious." "Rebecca," she said, concern evident in her voice. "Are you safe?" "I'm not in any physical danger," I assured her. "Just, please, I need someone discreet and thorough." 2 days later, I met Michael Reeves in a coffee shop downtown. He was a former police detective with 20 years of experience and eyes that had seen every form of human deception. I told him everything I knew and suspected. "I don't want to believe it," I concluded, "but I need the truth, whatever it is." Michael nodded, his expression professional and non-judgmental. "I'll need a retainer and some basic information about your husband. Recent photographs, his schedule, vehicle details, and any addresses you suspect might be relevant." I handed him an envelope containing everything he had requested, plus the phone number from our records and $5,000 in cash that I had withdrawn from my personal savings account. "How long will this take?" I asked. "Give me 2 weeks. I'll be thorough, Mrs. Clark, and discreet." Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I maintained a perfect facade, the loving wife going about her normal routines. I prepared David's favorite meals, listened to his stories about work, and even initiated sex one night, all while feeling completely disconnected from my body and my emotions. Each time he mentioned an upcoming business trip to Philadelphia, I smiled and asked if he needed anything special packed. Each time he called from the road, I asked about his day with genuine sounding interest. Each lie he told me was cataloged and stored away, building a wall of evidence in my mind. When Michael finally called for a meeting, David was conveniently away on another business trip, this time supposedly in Atlanta, though I now strongly suspected he was in Boston with his other family. We met in the same coffee shop. Michael slid a thick manila envelope across the table. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Clark," he said quietly. "You were right about everything." Inside the envelope were dozens of photographs, detailed reports, and copies of documents that confirmed my worst fears. David Clark, my husband of 11 years, had another wife named Sarah and two children, Emily, age 6, and Jake, age 4, living in a suburban home outside Boston. The photographs showed David with his arm around a pretty blonde woman, playing with the children in a park, attending what appeared to be a school function, and living an entirely domestic life that mirrored the one he shared with me. The documentation included a copy of a marriage certificate dated 7 years ago, while he was married to me with a different name, David Mitchell. "He's been living under two identities," Michael explained. "David Clark in Chicago, David Mitchell in Boston. He's maintained separate credit histories, bank accounts, and social circles. It's quite elaborate." "How is this even possible?" I whispered, staring at a photo of David pushing a little girl on a swing, his face alight with genuine joy. "It's not common, but it happens more than you'd think. His career gives him the perfect cover: regular travel, financial resources, and autonomy. The digital age makes it both easier to get away with this kind of deception and easier to get caught." "Does she know? This Sarah woman. Does she know about me?" Michael shook his head. "Based on my surveillance and the background check I ran, it appears she believes he's simply a consultant who travels frequently for work. She seems to have no awareness of your existence." I stared at a family portrait taken at what appeared to be a professional studio. David, Sarah, and their two beautiful children, all dressed in coordinating outfits, smiling at the camera. A perfect family. The family I had wanted. The children that could have been mine. "There's more," Michael said gently. "I looked into his medical history as you requested. I had asked Michael to investigate whether there might be a medical reason why evident I had never conceived, despite years of trying. He had a vasectomy 13 years ago, Mrs. Clark, before he met you." The room seemed to tilt around me. All those years of temperature tracking, fertility treatments, and tears over negative pregnancy tests. All those doctor appointments and invasive procedures I had endured, all while he knew conception was impossible. "Are you certain?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "I obtained his medical records. It's confirmed. The procedure was never reversed." I closed my eyes, feeling something break inside me. Not my heart that had been breaking slowly for years. This was different. This was the shattering of every truth I had built my life upon. "What will you do now?" Michael asked after I had been silent for several minutes. I opened my eyes and looked at the evidence of my husband's betrayal spread across the table. The decision crystallized with perfect clarity. "I'm going to need your help with one more thing," I said. Over the next week, I methodically executed the first phase of my plan. While David was away on what he claimed was a business conference in San Diego but was actually another visit to his Boston family, according to Michael's surveillance, I began quietly separating our finances. First, I visited our bank and opened a new individual account. Then I went to our safe deposit box and removed the documents I needed: our marriage certificate, insurance policies, property deed, and investment portfolio information. I photographed everything and returned the originals so David wouldn't notice their absence. Next, I consulted with Caroline's law firm, retaining their services without officially filing for divorce yet. I wanted to understand exactly what I was entitled to and how to protect myself legally before making any moves David might detect. "This is one of the most elaborate cases of fraud I've seen in a marriage," the senior partner told me after reviewing my evidence. "You have an extremely strong case for an advantageous settlement." "I don't just want what's fair," I replied. "I want justice." While I was making these preparations, David called regularly from his conference, telling me about speakers and networking events that were entirely fictional. I played along, asking questions about people who didn't exist in presentations that never happened. "I miss you," he said on our last call before his scheduled return. "I can't wait to come home to you." "I miss you too," I replied, amazed at how easily the lies now flowed from my lips. Safe travels home. The evening before David was due to return, Michael called with unexpected news. "Mrs. Clark, there's been a development you should know about," he said. I've been maintaining surveillance on the Boston residence as requested, and Sarah Mitchell just left the house with the children and numerous suitcases. They appeared to be departing for an extended period. Where did they go? I asked, suddenly alarmed. To the airport. I had an associate follow them. They boarded a flight to Chicago. My blood ran cold. Chicago, are you certain? Absolutely. Flight 242, American Airlines, landed at O'Hare 40 minutes ago. My mind raced through the possibilities. Was David bringing his two families together? Was this some kind of twisted confession he had planned? Or did Sarah discover his deception independently and decide to confront him and by extension me? I need you to find them, I said urgently. Where they're staying, what they're planning, everything. While waiting for Michael's update, I paced our house, looking at it with new eyes. Would his other wife soon be standing in this kitchen, touching these countertops, seeing the life her husband had built with another woman? Would those children have minus siblings to the children I never had play in the garden I had so carefully tended? 3 hours later, Michael called back. They checked into the Marriott downtown. Room registered to Sarah Mitchell. Based on the reservation details my contact was able to access, they're scheduled to stay for 5 days. 5 days? David was supposed to be home tomorrow and had no trips planned for the following week. This was no coincidence. There's something else, Michael continued. David Mitchell's flight from Boston landed an hour after theirs. He didn't meet them at the airport, and he hasn't gone to the hotel. He's currently at a restaurant downtown dining with a woman who is neither Yoon or Sarah Mitchell. I sat down heavily on the sofa. A third woman? It appears so. My associate is getting photographs now. When the photos arrived on my phone 30 minutes later, I stared in disbelief. The woman with David was young, perhaps mid-20s, with striking red hair and an animated way of speaking. They were clearly intimate, leaning close across the table, his hand occasionally covering hers. I had discovered my husband's second family only to immediately stumble upon evidence of a possible third relationship. How deep did this deception go? How many lives was David juggling? That night I made a decision. Instead of waiting for David to return home the next day, I would confront him at his downtown apartment, the pi-a-minus era he maintained for late nights at the office. I would catch him with this red-headed woman and end the charade once and for all. I arrived at the luxury high-rise at midnight using the key David didn't know I had copied years ago. The doorman recognized me as Mrs. Clark and waved me through without question. As I rode the elevator to the 12th floor, I rehearsed what I would say, how I would maintain my composure while exposing his lies. But when I unlocked the apartment door, the scene before me was not what I expected. David sat alone at the dining table, surrounded by papers and looking extremely distressed. When he saw me, he jumped to his feet, his face registering shock and then something like relief. "Rebecca, what are you doing here?" he asked, quickly gathering the papers into a pile. "I could ask you the same thing," I replied coldly. "You're supposed to be in San Diego." His expression shifted, calculating his response. "The conference ended early. I came straight here because I needed to deal with some urgent work issues." I moved closer, trying to see what he was hiding. "Work issues? Is that what you call her?" Confusion crossed his face. "Her? What are you talking about? The redhead you were having dinner with tonight? Is she another wife? Or just a girlfriend?" The color drained from his face. "You've been following me?" "Not personally. I hired someone else to do that." His eyes darted around the room as if looking for an escape. "Rebecca, I can explain. She's a client. An important new client who—" "Stop lying." I slammed my hand on the table. "I know everything, David. About Sarah, about Emily and Jake, about your life in Boston as David Mitchell, about the vasectomy you had before we even met. Every single lie." He sank back into his chair, the carefully constructed facade crumbling. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to understand that our entire marriage has been a fraud." I expected denial, anger, or even a confession. What I didn't expect was for David to bury his face in his hands and begin to weep. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he said between sobs. "It all spiraled out of control." "Save your explanations," I said, unmoved by his tears. "Your other wife is in Chicago. Did you know that? Sarah and your children are at the Marriott downtown." His head snapped up, eyes wide with genuine shock. "What? That's impossible. They can't be here. They arrived this afternoon. Did you think you could keep your two families separate forever?" David stood up so abruptly that his chair crashed to the floor behind him. "You don't understand. If Sarah's here, they're in danger. We're all in danger." This was not the reaction I had anticipated. "What are you talking about?" Instead of answering, he grabbed his phone and frantically dialed a number. When there was no answer, he threw the phone across the room with a curse. I need to get to them, he said, reaching for his jacket. And you need to pack a bag and go somewhere safe. Don't go home. Don't use your credit cards. Don't call anyone. I blocked his path to the door. You're not going anywhere until you explain what's happening. He took my shoulders, his grip painfully tight. Rebecca, listen to me. I'm not who you think I am. Neither of my identities is real. More lies, David? Or should I call you David Mitchell? Or is there another name I don't know about? His eyes darted to the window, then back to me. My real name is Daniel Morris. I've been in witness protection for 15 years. I laughed bitterly. Witness protection. That's your excuse for bigamy? It's not an excuse, it's the truth. I testified against the Kolchak crime family in 2008. They murdered my entire family in retaliation, my parents, my sister, even my college girlfriend. The U.S. Marshals gave me a new identity and relocated me to Chicago. I shook my head in disbelief. And what about Sarah and the children? Are they in on this ridiculous story too? Sarah is also in witness protection. We met in the program. We weren't ever supposed to marry. It violated all the protocols, but we fell in love. When she became pregnant with Emily, the marshals separated us for our safety. They gave her a new identity in Boston and me, a new identity here in Chicago. So you married me as, what, a cover story? The pieces were starting to fit together in a horrifying new pattern. Initially, yes, he admitted, his voice breaking. But I fell in love with you, Rebecca. That wasn't a lie. I stepped back from him, disgust and confusion warring within me. If what you're saying is true and that's a massive if, why would Sarah suddenly come to Chicago? Why risk exposing everything? She wouldn't. Not voluntarily. His face had gone ashen, which means either the marshals moved her because her cover was compromised, or what? Or the Kolchikas found her, and they're using her and my children to lure me out. He moved to a painting on the wall, swung it aside to reveal a safe, and quickly entered a combination. From inside, he withdrew a gun and what looked like a passport. I need to go, now. And so do you. He handed me an envelope from the safe. There's $10,000 in cash here. Go somewhere they can't find you. I'll contact you when it's safe. My head was spinning. This is insane. You expect me to believe you're some kind of protected witness? That there are mobsters after you? The redhead you saw me with tonight is Marshal Daniels, my handler. We were meeting because there have been suspicious activities around my Boston identity. Now I know why. He checked the gun and tucked it into his waistband. I stayed too long already. Whether you believe me or not, you need to leave Chicago tonight. I'm not going anywhere until I see proof of this elaborate story. David or Daniel hesitated, then rushed back to the table and handed me one of the papers he had been looking at when I arrived. It was a U.S. Marshal Service document with his photo and the name Daniel Morris, along with details of his witness protection arrangement. Another paper showed surveillance photos of men I didn't recognize, with notes about their movements in Boston over the past week. Oh my God, I whispered. This is real. Yes. And now you're in danger too. He moved toward the door. I have to find Sarah and the kids before they do. I'm coming with you, I said, making a split-second decision. Absolutely not. You'll be safer. I know what hotel they're in. I know what room. My investigator has been tracking them. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded curtly. Fine, but you follow my instructions exactly. This isn't a game, Rebecca. As we hurried from the apartment, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my husband had been wrong, but not in the way I had believed. The betrayal was real, but the reasons behind it were far more complex and dangerous than I could have imagined. The truth, it seemed, was only beginning to reveal itself. We took the service elevator down to the parking garage, David constantly scanning our surroundings with the hyper-awareness of someone accustomed to being hunted. In the car, he insisted I call my investigator and put him on speaker. Michael, it's Rebecca. I'm with my husband. The situation has evolved. Mrs. Clark, are you safe? Michael's concern was evident. For now, I need to know if there's been any unusual activity around Sarah Mitchell and the children. Actually, yes. 2 men have been watching the hotel since about an hour after they checked in. Professional types. They haven't approached the room, just maintaining surveillance. David cursed under his breath. Description? Michael hesitated, then answered. Both Caucasian, one bald with a scar along the right jawline, the other with short gray hair, both wearing dark suits. They're driving a black Suburban with tinted windows. Kolchak's men, David muttered. Victor and Alexei. They're enforcers. Michael's voice sharpened. Mr. Clark, would you like to explain what's going on? Mrs. Clark hired me to investigate a potential infidelity, not to get involved in what sounds like a dangerous situation. It's complicated, I interjected. Michael, I need you to stay on Sarah and the children. Let us know immediately if those men make a move or if anyone else shows up. Rebecca, this is beyond my usual services. If there's criminal activity involved, double your fee. I said firmly, triple it. Just don't lose sight of that family. After extracting his reluctant agreement, I ended the call. David was driving fast but carefully through the late-night Chicago streets, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. You've been investigating me for how long? He asked. A few weeks. Long enough to discover your other family, but not long enough, apparently, to uncover your witness protection status. He glanced at me. I'm sorry. For all of it, you deserved better. Save the apologies for later. Right now, explain how we're going to get Sarah and your children away from those men. We can't just walk in. If Victor and Alexei are watching, they'll recognize me immediately, and they'll assume you're connected to me. He thought for a moment. But they don't know about your investigator. I understood immediately. Michael could help get them out. Exactly. But we need a distraction. As we neared the hotel, a plan formed. I called Michael again and explained what we needed him to do. He protested at first, but eventually agreed when I promised to involve the authorities as soon as Sarah and the children were safe. David parked blocks from the hotel, and we waited in tense silence. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael in position. The plan was simple but risky. Michael would pose as hotel security, evacuating guests due to a gas leak. He would personally escort Sarah and the children out through the service entrance where we would be waiting. Meanwhile, David had called his marshal handler, who promised to dispatch a team immediately. If this works, David said quietly, we'll all need to disappear again. New identities, new locations. You understand what that means for us? I met his gaze steadily. Is there an us anymore, David? Or Daniel? Or whatever your name really is. Pain flickered across his face. I meant what I said. I did fall in love with you. None of that was pretend. You lied about everything, who you are, why you married me, why we couldn't have children. You made me believe something was wrong with me while knowing you'd had a vasectomy. The vasectomy was part of my witness protection, he explained. The marshals insisted no biological children who could be traced back to Daniel Morris. With Sarah, it was different. She was already in the program, already understood the risks. And that makes it better? You let me go through fertility treatments knowing they could never work. He had no answer for that, and I didn't expect one. The damage was done, the trust irrevocably broken. My phone buzzed again, moving now. 2 minutes. We exited the car and hurried to the service entrance. Staying in the shadows, David had his gun ready, his eyes constantly scanning our surroundings. For the first time, I saw the man beneath the carefully constructed identity alert. Dangerous. Dangerous. And haunted. The service door opened, and Michael appeared, guiding a confused minus-looking blonde woman into sleepy children. Sarah Mitchell, or whatever her real name was, gasped when she saw David. Dan, what's happening? The hotel said. No time to explain. He cut her off, moving to embrace her and the children. We need to move. Now. That's when she noticed me standing a few feet away. Her eyes widened in confusion, then narrowed in dawning comprehension. Who is she? She demanded. David hesitated, clearly torn between the immediate danger and the complicated explanation required. I'm Rebecca Clark, I said, stepping forward. David's wife from Chicago. Sarah's face drained of color. She pulled away from David, clutching her children closer. His what? We need to have this conversation somewhere safe. David insisted, reaching for her arm. She jerked away from him. Don't touch me. Is this true? You have another wife? Mom, I'm scared. The little girl Emily whimpered. It's complicated, Sarah, David pleaded. I'll explain everything, but we need to get off the street. Those men who've been watching you, they're Kolchak's people. At the name Kolchak, Sarah's anger transformed instantly to fear. She looked around wildly, then nodded. The children come with me. Not you. There's a safe house, David said. My handler is meeting us there. Michael, who had been keeping watch, suddenly tensed. Black Suburban turning onto the street. We need to move. We hurried to our vehicle, Sarah and the children with Michael in his car, David and Di in ours. As we pulled away, I saw the Suburban slow as it approached the hotel, 2 men inside scanning the area. At the safe house, an nondescript apartment in a building with enhanced security, Marshal Daniels was waiting. She was the redhead I had seen with David earlier, now dressed in tactical gear with her badge prominently displayed. Nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Clark, she said with surprising warmth. I've been trying to convince Daniel to tell you the truth for years. As Sarah and the children were settled in a bedroom, Marshal Daniels explained the situation to me more fully. David Daniel had been a key witness against Yuri Kolchak, testifying about money laundering operations he had uncovered while working at an investment firm. The testimony had sent Kolchak to prison for life, but his organization remained operational under his brother's leadership. When Daniel and Sarah fell in love within the program, it created a security nightmare, she explained. We separated them, gave them new identities in different cities. The marriage to you was, she hesitated, a cover I finished for her, a way to make David Clark seem more legitimate. Initially, yes, she admitted, but Daniel's feelings for you became genuine. It complicated everything. And the children, I asked? How did that work with him going back and forth between the families? Scheduled visitations disguised as business trips. It was highly irregular and against protocol, but Daniel insisted on being part of his children's lives. I thought about all those business trips over the years, the weekends away, the holidays missed, and no one considered how this would affect me, the woman who was unknowingly married to a man living a double life. Marshal Daniels had the grace to look uncomfortable. The program's priority is witness safety, Mrs. Clark. But for what it's worth, I advocated for telling you the truth once it became clear that Daniel's relationship with you was permanent. In the other room, I could hear David and Sarah arguing in hushed but intense voices. The children were crying, picking up on the tension and fear of the adults around them. What happens now? I asked. New identities for all of you. New locations completely separate from each other. She paused. Unless you choose to walk away. You're not in the program officially, so you have that option. The thought was tempting to walk away from this chaos, this deception, and rebuild my life alone. But I knew the Kolchaks wouldn't stop looking for Daniel, which meant they could find me too, hoping to use me to get to him. And if I walk away, will I be safe? We can offer you some protection, but not at the level of full witness protection. You'd always be looking over your shoulder. I considered my options carefully. Everything I had planned, the confrontation, the divorce, the justice I sought, had been based on a fundamental misunderstanding of who my husband was and why he had deceived me. The betrayal was still real, still painful, but the context had shifted dramatically. I need time to think, I said finally, before Marshal Daniels could respond. David emerged from the bedroom, his face grim. Sarah's agreed to the relocation, he said, but she wants nothing to do with me anymore. Can you blame her? I asked coldly. No. He looked utterly defeated. I've destroyed everything. Both my families. All because I couldn't choose, couldn't commit fully to either life. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. What about the men watching the hotel? I asked Marshal Daniels, changing the subject. Our team is tracking them. They'll be detained for questioning, but it's unlikely they'll face any significant charges. Surveillance isn't illegal, so they'll be free to keep hunting us. David said bitterly, which is why you all need to disappear tonight. Marshal Daniels checked her watch. The transport team will be here in an hour. You should each pack one small bag with essentials. Everything else stays behind. As Sarah began gathering the children's things, I pulled David aside. I need to know something, and I need the absolute truth, I said quietly. Did you ever love me at all, or was I just a convenient cover story? He looked into my eyes, and for once, I believed I was seeing the real man beneath all the lies. I loved you, Rebecca. I still do. But I loved Sarah too. I convinced myself that I could maintain both lives, that I could be both men. It was selfish and wrong, and I've hurt everyone I care about. I nodded, accepting his answer without forgiveness. One more question. The private account, I found the one with over $2 million in it. Where did that money come from? He looked surprised. You found that? It's clean money, if that's what you're worried about. I've been saving it for years, as a safety net outside the Marshal's program. Insurance in case we ever needed to run. We as in you and Sarah? Or you and me? Both, all of us. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I had seen countless times but now viewed differently. I never knew which life might be compromised first. An hour later, we were split into separate vehicles. Sarah and the children were taken to a Marshal's jet at a private airfield. I was given the option to go with them or to take a different route with David. Standing on the tarmac, watching the wind whip Sarah's hair as she clutched her children's hands, I made my decision. I'm going alone, I announced. Marshal Daniels frowned. That's not one of the options, Mrs. Clark. For your safety. I'm not asking permission. I handed her a folded piece of paper. This is the account number for the emergency fund David set up, the one with over $2 million. I transferred all but $50,000 to my new account this morning. David's head snapped up. You what? Consider it my divorce settlement. I turned to face him fully. I may not have known you were in witness protection, but I did know you were living a double life. I planned my exit strategy before I ever confronted you. He looked stunned. Rebecca, that money was for emergencies, for running? Well, I'm running. Just not with you. I turned back to Marshall Daniels. I have a new identity already prepared. New documentation, new background. My investigator has connections. Michael stepped forward from where he had been waiting by his car. Everything's ready, Rebecca, as we discussed. David looked between us, betrayal and grudging admiration warring on his face. You planned all this before you even knew about the witness protection? I planned to leave a lying, cheating husband and take what I was owed, I corrected him. The circumstances have changed, but the outcome remains the same. Marshall Daniels looked uncomfortable but didn't move to stop me. We can't force you to accept our protection, Mrs. Clark, but the danger to you is real. I understand the risks, but I've spent 11 years living someone else's idea of my life. I won't do it anymore. I walked over to Sarah, who watched me warily, her arms around her children. I didn't know about you, I told her quietly. I was as deceived as you were. She nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of sympathy and lingering suspicion. What will you do now? Start over, somewhere new, somewhere he won't find me. I looked down at her children, the family that could have been mine in another life. Take care of them. With that, I turned and walked to Michael's waiting car without looking back at David. As we drove away, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of everything that had happened: the discovery, the confrontation, the unraveling of my entire life. Where to? Michael asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I thought about the new identity waiting for me, the new life I would build far from Chicago and the lies that had defined my marriage. Airport, I said firmly. I have a plane to catch. 3 days later, I was sitting on a balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean, a new passport with a new name in my pocket and the majority of David's emergency fund in my new bank account. My phone also buzzed with a text from an unknown number. They're gone. Kolchak's men. Picked up by FBI on unrelated charges. You're safe for now. I'm sorry for everything. I did love you. -D. I deleted the message without responding. Then I blocked the number and turned back to the sunset, ready to begin my life again, this time on my own terms. 6 months passed. I settled into my new identity as Catherine Hayes, purchasing a small but elegant house on the Oregon coast and establishing myself as a freelance event coordinator, working remotely with clients across the country. The money I had taken from David's emergency fund provided security and a fresh start, though I was careful not to spend lavishly or draw attention to myself. I made a few acquaintances in my new community, but kept mostly to myself, still processing the trauma of discovering my entire marriage had been built on elaborately constructed lies. Occasionally, I wondered about Sarah and the children, where they had been relocated, whether they were adapting to their new lives. I even thought about David, wondering if he had been given yet another identity, another chance to reinvent himself. I maintained minimal contact with Michael, who had agreed to alert me if there were any developments I should know about. His occasional messages confirmed that the situation had stabilized. The Kolchak organization had apparently lost interest in Daniel Morris after several key members were arrested in a major FBI operation targeting organized crime syndicates across the Northeast. Life had almost begun to feel normal again when the package arrived. It was a simple manila envelope with no return address, delivered by courier to my front door. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. Catherine, this belongs to you. It's the truth you deserve. -D. Mdari. Marshall Daniels, the red-headed woman who had been David's handler. With trembling hands, I inserted the drive into my laptop. It contained dozens of files, official reports, photographs, transcripts, and surveillance footage spanning more than 15 years. The complete record of Daniel Morris's involvement with the Witness Protection Program, his testimony against the Kolchaks, and the aftermath. I spent hours going through it all, finally seeing the full picture of the man I had married. There were photos of him before, a younger, less polished version of the man I knew, working as a financial analyst at the firm where he had discovered the Kolchaks money laundering operation. There were transcripts of his testimony, horrifying accounts of how the Kolchaks had murdered his family one by one when they discovered he was cooperating with federal authorities. And there was more documents detailing his relocation to Chicago, the creation of David Clark, the careful construction of his new identity, regular psychological evaluations noting his struggles with trauma, guilt, and isolation, notes from Marshall Daniels expressing concerns about his mental health and his ability to maintain his cover long minus term. Then came the files about Sarah, originally Melissa Turner, another protected witness who had testified against a different branch of the Kolchak organization. They had met at a support group for witnesses in the program, forbidden from revealing their true identities even to each other, but drawn together by their shared experiences of loss and reinvention. Their relationship had been against every protocol, their marriage an even greater violation. When Sarah became pregnant with Emily, the Marshalls had been forced to separate them, creating new identities in different cities. The documentation showed the constant battle between the program administrators, who wanted to keep them permanently separated for security reasons, and David's insistence on maintaining contact with his family. The most recent files included surveillance photos of the Kolchak enforcers watching Sarah's hotel in Chicago, reports of their subsequent arrest on federal racketeering charges, and the final relocation plans for both David and Sarah's families. The last document was different, a personal letter from Marshall Daniels to me. Catherine, by the time you receive this, I will have left the Marshal's service. What happened with Daniel Morris's case represented a fundamental failure of our program, not just in terms of security protocols, but in human terms as well. You were an innocent caught in an impossible situation, and for my part in that, I apologize. I'm breaking numerous federal laws by sending you this information, but I believe you deserve to know the full truth about the man you married. Daniel Morris was a good man who made an incredibly brave decision to testify against one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country. That decision cost him everything: his identity, his family, his future. It doesn't excuse what he did to you or to Sarah, but perhaps it helps explain how a person under that kind of pressure, living with that kind of fear and isolation for years, might make desperate choices in search of connection and normalcy. Sarah and the children have been safely relocated. Daniel has been given a new identity in a different program with enhanced security protocols. Neither knows where the other is, and neither knows I'm contacting you. You're safe now. The Kolchak organization has been dismantled, its leadership imprisoned or eliminated. You continue your life as Catherine Hayes without looking over your shoulder, or you can reclaim your original identity if you choose. That decision is yours alone. I hope this information brings you some measure of closure. Wishing you peace, Margaret Daniels. I sat in stunned silence after reading the letter, trying to process everything I had learned. The man I had married, the man I had loved, had been living with trauma and fear I couldn't imagine, making impossible choices in impossible circumstances. It didn't erase the pain of his betrayal, but it colored it differently. The anger that had sustained me for months began to transform into something more complex, not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of understanding. 3 days later, as I walked along the beach near my house, I noticed a man standing at the water's edge, looking out at the horizon. Something about his posture was hauntingly familiar, and my heart began to race. As I drew closer, he turned, and I found myself face to face with David, or Daniel, or whatever name he was using now. He looked different, thinner, with a beard and longer hair, his eyes carrying a weariness that seemed bone minus deep. "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "I didn't," he replied. "Marshall Daniels told me before she left the service. She thought we deserved a chance to talk, one last time. She sent me your files." He nodded. "I know. I asked her too. You deserved the whole truth." We stood in silence for a moment, the wind and waves the only sound between us. "I'm not staying," he said finally. "I just needed to see you, to tell you in person how sorry I am. For everything." "Where will you go?" "I can't tell you that. It's safer for both of us if you don't know." I studied his face, this man who had been both stranger and husband to me. "Did you ever consider telling me the truth? About the witness protection?" "Every day," he admitted. "But the rules were clear. Telling anyone, even a spouse, could compromise the entire operation. And after the Kolchaks murdered my family, I couldn't take that risk. So you chose to build a life on lies instead. I thought I could manage it. Keep both worlds separate. Protect everyone I cared about." He shook his head. "I was wrong. I hurt everyone instead." "Yes," I agreed. "You did." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, holding it out to me. It was a USB director similar to the one Marshall Daniels had sent. "What's this?" I asked, not taking it. "Your life back. Everything you need to reclaim your identity as Rebecca Clark if you want to. Financial records proving you had no knowledge of my activities, documentation of the witness protection situation, testimony from Marshall Daniels clearing you of any involvement." I stared at the drive. "And if I don't want to be Rebecca Clark anymore, then stay Catherine Hayes. The choice is yours. But I wanted you to have the option." I slowly took the drive from his hand, our fingers brushing briefly. "The money I took, keep it." he said firmly. You earned it living with my lies for 11 years. We began walking along the shoreline, maintaining a careful distance between us. Sarah and the children, I said. Are they okay? I don't know. We've been completely separated. New identities, new locations. It's better that way. Do you miss them? Every day, he said quietly. Just like I miss you. I stopped walking and turned to face him fully. You know we can never go back. Too much has happened. I know. He met my gaze directly, his blue eyes, the same eyes that had once looked at me with love and had then deceived me for years, now filled with resignation and regret. I didn't come here hoping for reconciliation. Rebecca, I came to give you closure and ask for your forgiveness, even though I know I don't deserve it. I thought about everything I had learned, everything I had lost and gained over the past 6 months. The anger that had fueled me had diminished, leaving room for a more nuanced understanding of the impossible situation we had all been caught in. I don't forgive you, I said finally. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I understand better now, and I hope you find peace wherever you go next. He nodded, accepting this without protest. And you? Will you find peace here as Catherine? Or somewhere else as Rebecca? I looked out at the ocean, at the new life I had built from the ashes of his deception. I don't know yet. But for the first time in years, the choice is truly mine. We walked back toward the road in silence. When we reached my car, he stopped. This is goodbye then, he said. Yes, for good this time. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket again and handed me a folded piece of paper. One last thing. If you're ever in real danger, if you ever need help and have nowhere else to turn, this number will reach me. No matter where I am, no matter what name I'm using, I'll come. I took the paper without unfolding it. Thank you. But I won't call. I know. A sad smile crossed his face. Take care of yourself, Rebecca or Catherine, whoever you choose to be. You too. Daniel. I watched him walk away, this man who had been at the center of my life for 11 years, now a stranger again. When he disappeared around the bend in the road, I opened my car door and placed both the USB drive and the folded paper with his number in the glove compartment. Then I drove home to the house I had bought with his money, to the life I was building on my own terms. That night, I sat on my deck watching the stars over the Pacific, thinking about identities those we're born with, those thrust upon us, and those we choose for ourselves. Daniel Morris had become David Clark, had become someone else entirely, forever running from his past. Sarah Mitchell and her children were starting over somewhere with new names, new histories, and I had a choice to make: return to being Rebecca Clark, with all the painful history that name carried, or continue as Catherine Hayes, building something new from the wreckage of my former life. I thought about the 80-9 panicked voicemails David had left when I first disappeared with his money. Before he knew, I had discovered the full truth about his witness protection status. In the very last one, his voice breaking with emotion, he had said something that only now made sense. Rebecca, please, you don't understand. It wasn't just about having two families. It was about trying to hold on to something real in a life built entirely on lies. You were real to me, the only real thing I had. In the end, I chose neither Rebecca or Catherine. I took elements of both identities and created something new: Elizabeth Reed, a woman who understood that the truth is rarely simple and that even the deepest betrayals can contain kernels of love and desperate humanity. I never saw Daniel David again, never used the number he gave me. But sometimes, on quiet nights when the wind comes off the ocean just right, I think about him and Sarah and their children, all of us scattered across the country under different names, connected by an invisible thread of shared history and secret. And I hope that somewhere, they've found the peace that I've finally discovered for myself, the peace that comes from knowing exactly who you are, even if no one else does.